it's essential, right? As hard as we work, we have to allow ourselves to play, to just be free, going back to that freedom, right? To just be in a place of joy, right? And allowing ourselves to expand in new experiences and, get out of the routine. So we also expand our perspective, right? And we then come back rejuvenated so we can give more. One of the things that I have noticed recently is that, many of my clients are coming to me, or just, even business friends of mine have, really recently experienced burnout and just feeling like, oh my goodness, like I'm overwhelmed by this. And so I want to just be super honest that I have experienced burnout as well. And, here's what I want to say. I've experienced it multiple times at different points in my career. And one of the first times that I was in that space, I remember feeling kind of embarrassed by it, like, maybe I just can't hack it. Maybe I don't have what it takes. And I really felt this internal sense of guilt. Like, I don't want to disappoint people, right? I don't want to let anybody down, or I don't want to have to say no to things, or I don't want to let on that, like, I'm feeling overwhelmed and stressed out over here. And the reality is that that's a really natural feeling. And I know I'm not alone in that. So if you've ever felt that way, let me know. So there's definitely been times, even in, since I left my corporate career and started my own entrepreneurial journey, where I just wondered, like, maybe this is too much. Maybe it's too hard to be a mother and be a spouse and, be a really successful online entrepreneur and to be a volunteer in the community and, to do all the things. And like, maybe you just can't do all the things. So I wanted to just talk about that and have a really real conversation. Here's what I had to admit to myself. One is that I actually really love to work, and maybe this is you too. And so I had to admit that even when I go on vacation, I get ideas and creative downloads for meditations to write, or email messages that I want to send out to my community, or I get inspired by different things that I want to teach about inside of my coaching programs. And so I know that about myself, right? I know that I'm constantly receiving information and I'm constantly in this creative mind. And so I've given myself permission to just be that way, right? To really own that I'm a lifelong learner, that I'm a creative being, and that I'm a consummate entrepreneur. And I want you to just check in and see if that's you, because if that is you, then we can just give ourselves permission to be that way. But here's the deal. We also then have to give ourselves permission to put in place really sustainable business practices and to put in place systems and ways of doing our work, so that we also have boundaries about how we do our work and when we do our work, right? So that we're not giving every ounce of ourselves over to that work and then getting into a place of overexhaustion, and it's starting to feel no longer like a joy and more like hard work. And then we get into this place of burnout. Because one of the things that I have realized to be true is that, we all came into this work because we were craving freedom. Right? Freedom to do the things that we want to do, freedom to be able to control our schedules, right? Freedom to be able to work where we want to work and how we want to work, right? Freedom to allow ourselves to get paid, really well for our work, right? And to set our own, dynamics around that, right? All of that kind of freedom is super important to us. And so here's the thing, if we, don't take time off, if we ignore our health, if we don't put in place practices and systems and teams and, things that allow us to do our work with flow, then it will lead to health issues. It will lead to burnout. It will lead to exhaustion, right? And if you're in that place right now and you haven't experienced those things yet, like, you will. They will come crashing down on you, because it's just sort of like the ultimate thing that happens when we don't have those things in place. So we actually have to do the work to put those in place. So today I wanted to give you, 3 things and talk about just a few things that I have really encountered to be essential in, creating a business that's long and successful and really rewarding in life, and not based on burnout and exhaustion. Here's the thing. If you have a business that requires every ounce of you with zero boundaries, it's only a matter of time before it catches up, right? So let's figure out how to avoid that undesirable outcome and really create intentionally the outcome that we are looking to create. So one of the things that I always tell people is that it's your business, and so you get to make up the rules. And I think that's incredibly empowering, and we forget it all the time, right? Raise your hand if you've forgotten it. I've forgotten it, right? So one of the key mantras that I have for myself is this idea of making it easy. So one of the things that I want to give you first off is just allowing yourself and giving yourself permission for it to be easier. And I literally say this mantra in multiple different ways. Like, there are easier ways to make money. It gets to be easy. How can I provide massive value and allow myself to do this the easiest way possible? So that is something that I would just give to you as, right off the bat. How do you, are you willing to take that on for yourself and allowing things to be easier? Allowing things to be easier in terms of how you design things, and allowing things to be easier in terms of how you actually show up to do your work, right? And how maybe you even schedule that work. All of those kinds of things. The second thing that I want to say here is insisting on perfection is not sustainable. And honestly, it's not really profitable either, because if we're always feeling like we have to tweak something, if we're always feeling like it has to be better, then we're probably not spending our time in the right places and in the right ways. So one of the things that I always tell women to do is really to think about it differently, to think about insisting on progress, right? Insisting on, constant fulfillment and expansion. And that doesn't mean perfection. Recently, I was releasing a new product, and I could feel myself wanting to have like every little detail be a certain exact way. And I, have a team member who often, has that same tendency. And so during one of our team meetings, I had to check us, right? Like, I had to actually check in and be like, hey, is this tendency towards perfection? Because let's really think about this product. This is a low dollar membership product. Like, we have really amazing things in it. If we put it out here like this, it's actually going to be phenomenal, right? And so if we could spend 500 hours making it look slightly different to get to that perfect spot, but would it really matter? And would it actually really change the dynamic in terms of the revenue? Probably not, right? And so allowing yourself to really evaluate, where is that a tendency for you, and where is it hanging you up and actually making you profit, and then also just like sucking the joy out of the work because you're doing all the minutia kind of stuff that really probably doesn't even need to happen. So insisting on perfection is not sustainable, nor is it profitable. The second thing that I want to tell you is that working harder is not always the solution. And this is really counterintuitive for a lot of people, because it feels like, if I just put a couple more hours in, then I'll make more money. But there's a couple things that are going on there. One, you have to be spending your time on the right stuff for it actually to be producing revenue. So that's the first question I always ask. Are you actually focused on the right activities inside of your business? Because if you're just pushing the rock uphill with stuff that's not actually revenue producing and exhausting yourself, then that's really not the right place to be putting your time in the first place. Also, I would do a quick evaluation and a check-in on your business, right? Really looking, one of the things I teach women is to produce multiple revenue streams of income, right? And so if you've got multiple streams of income, really doing an evaluation of, where is the majority of your income or your revenue coming from? And how are you allocating your time based on those revenue streams? Because one of the things that I will often see is that women are dumping tons of time into activities that are actually producing very little revenue. And so, if you've got a revenue stream that's just like pumping money your way, then that's probably where you should be having the majority of your focus and your energy go to, whether it's, in getting more people into that, particular revenue stream and working with you, or reaching out, doing the sales, the leads, right? Like actually really capitalizing on that. One of the things I find a lot is that women get sucked into doing non-revenue activities. So really evaluating, is this something that drives me revenue? And in terms of the revenue streams that I have, am I actually allocating my time appropriately? One of the things that has been really instrumental to me in building an entrepreneurial business, and very different than, but I think it applies even if you're in a corporate environment and in a leadership role, is really giving yourself that queen bee title. Really thinking like a CEO, and what are the things that only you can do in your business that really drive your business forward, right? So that you're focusing on those things and not all of the things. And so for me, like doing a presentation like this, coming on, engaging with my audience, providing valuable content, like my assistant's not going to do that, right? This is a key piece of my role. Having sales conversations with people, actually creating the content, right? Those are like key pieces of, serving my audience and building the relationships. So things for you to come back to. The other thing that I would give you is, if you're, having trouble identifying what are the things that you could actually let go of, so there's less struggle and less like frustration, is a simple tip that I've used, and I call it 3 lists of freedom. And it's just really identifying for yourself, what are the things that you could either eliminate that you're doing, that, you've been doing, but they're just not necessary, and you could just like get rid of it or stop doing it completely. 2 would be, what could you delegate or outsource? So is there somebody on your team or somebody that you need to hire that could be doing that activity instead of you, and maybe possibly even doing it better? So when I first started, out in sort of the online space of business, I was like editing my own videos and like, bootstrapping it and doing all these things together. And I quickly realized like that was an item to delegate. I had no expertise. I didn't enjoy doing it. I would procrastinate on it, and then I wouldn't get my videos out, and they would be low quality. So actually delegating that out to somebody was a massive up level, because I could actually have somebody who really loved doing it, do it, and do it better than me. The third one would be automate. So what can you automate inside of your business? And so one of the things that I have found is that actually having a really good website on the back end and having systems and processes for how I automate things allows me to stay in better connection, to really nurture my audiences, to build more authentic relationships with people, and to really, provide more value. And so there's probably pieces of your business that you could be automating that would just allow you to not even have to do it. Also, just like inside of your life, right? Are there things inside of your life that you could automate so that you don't have to do it? Maybe it's a meal delivery service, or having the dry cleaning get picked up and dropped off at your doorstep so you don't have to go make that drive, right? Having a auto ship order of certain products that you either, buy weekly from the grocery store, or that, are just like the cleaning supplies in your house, whatever it is, right? Like there are ways to automate things that really allow you to have a simpler process in place, so that, you're able to really put your time and effort towards the things that matter, right? And that could fill you up and save time, right? Like that 20 minutes that you would have taken to drive to the dry cleaners and then talk to them for 10 and then drive back for 20, like you could use that hour to do something else for yourself, right? Or hang out with your kid, or go exercise. Okay. The other thing that I have on this list, so we've talked about not insisting on perfection isn't sustainable. Working harder is not always the solution. And then the third one that I wanted to give you is that you need to know when to say no. And I would probably also say you also need to say when to say yes unapologetically. So either yes or no. You need to know how to say both. So one of the things that I have found is just really saying yes to the work and the projects and the kinds of things that light you up. And my husband, had a friend, and he used to say, Is this going to improve my life? And that was his litmus test for whether he was going to say yes to certain things in work and life or not. If it felt like it was going to improve his life through the relationships or the knowledge or the value that he was going to give and receive, then yeah, it was a yes. And if not, then it's a no, right? If it feels like, if you even have a small little inkling of an intuitive hit of like, ooh, this isn't going to be what I want it to be, or this is going to be a drag, or that's going to feel really hard, that's an alarm bell going off. Like that's a signal not to be doing that thing, right? And that it's okay to say no, right? And you can still be loving and generous and a kind human and tell people that like you really, that's a no, right? I've had to decline certain activities and say, right now I'm not taking on any of those types of projects because I'm focusing my efforts over here. And I don't feel like I would be able to serve you as well as I would like to. It's a no, that's fine, right? It can still be said with love. I'd love to come back with you and have another conversation with you at another point if that's something that I'm doing again, right? Like that's totally legitimate. The other thing I want to say is knowing when to sort of like say no inside of your calendar is a whole nother ball. And we could probably have an entire conversation about that. But one of the things that I have gotten really masterful at is being very intentional about how my calendar stacks up. I have been guilty of doing launches back to back, of saying yes to everything and then piling it up and then having no personal space. And I've learned from that, like it does not work for me. So I have 2 days that I fully block off on my calendar that are not schedulable for clients unless I decide to give that day over. I put all of the bulk of my client work into the middle of my week between Tuesday and Thursday. That's when I do my group coaching calls. That's when I do my individual client work. That's when I go most of the time to go visit, clients that I'm on site with, things like that. And then I have time, right? I have space to then designate for the other work that's inside of my business, right? Whether it's writing, creating content, coming up with things like we're doing right now. Or it could be that I'm, batching videos or recording meditations, or I'm recording, content for the programs that I'm offering. There's work that has to happen outside of those calls. And so I make space and time for that. So I have time for that creative energy. The other thing that I have realized is that, when I manage my calendar, I say I will often block the times, and that is like physically a way of saying, hey, like this is a no, like this particular block of time is off limits for anybody but me. And in doing that, what I am doing is I am actually allowing myself that gift of space. And so, a good example would be yesterday. I had designated it as a day that, was a blocked day, but I gave it to a particular client that's a new client of mine. And I was working with them all day long from 10 to, whatever time in the afternoon. And so I knew that was going to be a large expenditure of energy. So I had my entire morning blocked off until 10. So I could actually give myself space to do the things that I want to do in a morning that rejuvenate me, right? Like walking my dog, getting out in nature, being able to get my kids off to their activities in the morning, being able to spend a full hour working out and feeling refreshed by that. Giving myself some space, inside of that morning to kind of plan and think about what's coming next. I've given myself a very spacious day because my day was jammed up with a meeting yesterday and it was a lot of giving. And so today is really about regrouping, allowing myself space, not feeling like I have to be pressured to show up somewhere and perform, right? All of that sort of stuff is super important. So balancing it out for yourself, giving yourself room to recover, right? It also happens, inside, and this would be the last thing that I would say is give yourself space for breaks. A lot of women still don't feel like it's safe to take a vacation, or they don't still feel like it's safe to take a rest, or, even take a nap, right? Many of us feel guilty about doing something even as simple as taking a nap, when we would feel no guilt about like telling a child to go take a nap if they're getting cranky and need to rest, right? Like we would advise that in a second, and yet we don't always allow that for ourselves. So one of the things that I have gotten to be really good about is scheduling regular vacations. And honestly, like we go on awesome epic vacations every like 2 to 3 months. And we take advantage of every child, vacation break. And then we create other ones on top of it, because it's essential, right? As hard as we work, we have to allow ourselves to play, to just be free, going back to that freedom, right? To just be in a place of joy, right? And allowing ourselves to expand in new experiences and get out of the routine. So we also expand our perspective, right? And we then come back rejuvenated so we can give more.